Hello, this video is edited from one of my online classes. It's of an Australian landscape scene, but as the subject of the video is the beautiful sky and the sunlit hills in the distance, it could be from countless places around the world. The video is quite long. The reason for that is I don't like editing out any steps from the video, and I think if you're going to learn from a demonstration like this, you need to see the whole process from the design to the drawing, the colour mixing, and all the way through to the finished painting. I also give a lot of useful tips throughout the video, so this is another reason why if you can watch it all the way through, I think you'll get maximum benefit from it. There's the focal point, this lovely light hitting the hill. This is Patterson's curse, a common noxious weed in Australia, and I like the cloud, so beyond that it's relatively straightforward. Nice gum tree here just to the left of centre. This is sort of the hero shape, and that's what I'm going to focus on. So and you know, the composition is pretty good. Probably the only thing I'm going to change, I'm going to bring the horizon down just a tad so it's not quite so close to the middle, and then some very quick lines to define these different shapes. But it's a pretty good composition anyway as it is. So let's just have a look at this. This is the middle. I'm going to come down about maybe a couple of centimetres. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe 3 centimetres. Great. That just gives me very roughly the bottom of the distant hills. And then we've got this dark hill. There, that'll do. Bring this down a bit more. And now I'm going to draw in this foreground hill. I'm going to bring the hill back a little bit. I want to leave myself enough room that I can get in this lovely shadow pattern. That's good. And this tree is going to go here somewhere. And we've got lots of trees along this line. There, we've got some nice small trees down here, which I'll put in just with very light marks. Tree here, big tree here. Make one bigger tree and a couple of little ones there. The key thing is to preserve all this light. This line for the location of the bright green is also important. There we go. There we go. All right, I think we're ready to start now. Let me have a look at these colours. You know, we've got a big sky, but we've got lots of clouds in there. So we're going to have our violets in the clouds and then this bright blue for the sky. So let's mix the blue first. And then the violets. There we go. So for the sky, we'll start with cobalt blue. And really that'll probably do. It's just quite a strong cobalt blue, which will turn into a graded wash. And maybe just a bit more. Got to remember the colour's going to dry lighter. That'll do. And for the lower sky, I'll mix some very weak cad orange. The Winsor Newton cad orange is more of a yellowish orange. Think of it as a warm yellow. And that's probably good enough. There's a bit more colour down this end. So just weak cad orange here, maybe a bit more orange and pink down here. Maybe a small amount of pink over here. And then for the darker parts of the clouds, some French ultramarine. A little bit of permanent rose. Just a tiny bit of burnt sienna. And I'm going to make that just a bit darker than the darkest blue for the darkest cloud, you know, so these darks are darker than that blue, but these darks here are probably about the same or a bit lighter. But if I mix the darkest cloud, then when I'm painting the lighter clouds, I'll just add a little bit more water. Okay, rather than adding burnt sienna, I'm going to add a little bit of the cad orange to that to make that dark. That's good. It's still a bit too light. And that should be good enough. Okay. I'll wet the back of the paper one more time. There we go. And pick up a big load of blue, and I'm happy with the sky patterns. Probably the only thing that's going to be, it's a little bit tricky with this scene here, is this shape here where we've got a light sky, a light cloud with a dark cloud behind it. Okay, so you just have to be a bit mindful when we start painting this shape that you've got to leave a lot of white broken edges at this end. Lots of broken edges, just the brush pretty well parallel to the paper. Come back up. This sky should be a bit lighter down here, so I'll add a bit more water to it. This will be a lot darker up here. Come down here. Lots of little gaps. That'll do. Okay, I'm going to add a bit more blue and just darken that section there, because I do want this graded wash from the top to bottom. Okay, then I'll go into my orange and just go in and help add a bit of warmth to these clouds. When painting the clouds, it's important that you don't lose all the broken edges. You don't paint with the cad orange all the way through to the blue over every part. It's okay and ideal to touch some parts of the blue, but you still have to leave some white paper that's an untouched broken egg. Now that's too strong, so I'll just add a lot more water and just dilute that. this is one time where I'm not going to bring my brush and let some of that blue flow into this part of the cloud, because I want to keep the leading edge of the cloud sunlit. Okay. Got a little bit of weak blue back here, so I'll just pick up a bit more water and just run that down here. So I'm going to throw in a bit of pink just to add a little bit of warmth here and there, especially down this end here. Now, one thing I don't like is I've got this almost a straight line here, so I'm going to get my tissue and expand this cloud. There we go. And then if I just lightly, rather than pressing like I was, I just lightly dab it, and it will give me some nice variation of edges. There we go. That's better. Okay, now I'm going to go in with this darker mix. Just getting rid of the blues there. The angle of my board is about 15 degrees. The steeper the angle, the thicker paint you have to use, otherwise it will flow down the paper too fast. There. And again, it doesn't have to all be exact, you know. I'm going to lighten this a bit and add a little bit of dark colour up here. There. Break up some of these sharp edges. There. It's a bit too strong. Just get some water into it. Here, because I used the tissue, you've got to remember that it means that area is going to be dry and you're going to get hard edges there, so you've got to allow for that. And we've got quite a dark shape running along here. And it probably would have been good not to wet this area, but it doesn't matter. That would be okay. Now, there's too much pink in my dark areas, so I'm going to go in with some, add a lot more French ultramarine into it. There. And the thing with skies, if you get a bright light here, there's a good chance there'll be a shadow behind it because of the light is being stopped by the cloud, and that, so then the cloud then casts a shadow. These clouds have a dark area at the bottom. I want to paint that in, but I have to be careful that the paint doesn't run down into the hills below. So by painting with the painting vertical, I've got more chance of controlling the paint and achieving my aim. I don't want to lose this light here, so I'm lifting the board up so it's horizontal. That way the dark paint won't continue to flow down towards the horizon. So I'll get rid of this blue, but I'll leave this here because I can probably use that for that distant hill. Over here I'll mix a very small amount of bright green mixed with aureolin and cobalt turquoise. Lots of aureolin, a little bit of turquoise to create a very bright green. I only need a little bit of it here. None of these shapes are that big except for this one here. And then here, I'm just going to get some raw sienna. This is one of those times where I don't want to use a dirty colour, I want quite a bright colour. I'll also mix a large puddle of raw umber. This will save me some mixing time later when I'm painting the foreground. I'm going to paint all of this as if there is no big shadow on it, and then later I'll paint the shadow over the top. If I paint these darker segments early, when I do the shadow over the top, there's a good chance they will bleed. And that's not a problem, you can always put them back in again. But I prefer to leave them out now and put them in later when I do the shadow. We'll see, I may change my mind once I start painting. That'll do. And I'm going to add a bit of turquoise to it, just to give it a hint of green. Great. For now, all I'm going to do is just get any weak blue-grey colour and just paint that, just to fill that gap up. This is not the final colour. I just wanted to tint the white paper of the distant hill. Later I'll have to go over it again. There we go. In fact, if you do it, remember this will dry lighter. I've left a broken edge along this line. And leave another broken edge there. Okay. Then we'll pick up this bright green. There we go. I'll add a bit more aureolin here to emphasize the brightness. Great. That'll do. And then the foreground, we've got this sort of somewhere between this raw umber mix and this green. So I'm going to pick up some of that, and just paint that here. Great, that'll do. And now we've got all this massive purple. Because we're going to be doing a lot of splattering here, as long as this top area has lost its surface moisture, so if you run your hand over it, you don't drag any paint anywhere, you can just get a couple of sheets of paper like this, and that will protect that part. Having said that, don't start splattering everywhere thinking it's protected. It's just for that one or two drops that might land in the sky that will stop that from happening. Alright, so let's have a look at this. We've got this Patterson's Curse, and you can't see it all that well, so it's not something we need to spend a lot of time on, but I think it'd be nice having a little bit of that purple there. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pick up my sea sponge, and I'm going to find a piece of sponge where the hairs are just sticking out quite a bit. And pick up some of that paint. I'm going to keep this back part squished, otherwise it'll absorb all this paint. And then all the way along here, just lightly dabbing some of this purple. Keep moving it around, otherwise you'll end up with regular marks. In fact, I want these little ones here. I'll fix that later. Leave lots of white because we're going to paint the colours in between. And then here and there. That'll do. Alright, now squeeze that paint back in there if I need to come back to use it. Now I'm going to repeat the process, only this time with this raw umber. Remember, this is raw umber with a little bit of the turquoise in it. And only trouble with these sponges, they do use a lot of paint. Well, just to load them up. Just move it around. That'll do. And now I've just got to play with this edge here so it's not so sharply defined. Just to break up that sharp edge. This doesn't matter because this is going to have a lot of, these trees are going to cover a lot of this. There we go. And then we've got all this foreground. Pick up my size 12 brush. Some raw umber. A little bit of the turquoise. A little bit too much of the turquoise, so I'll add more raw umber. And just a bit of the aureolin. You know, I'm also going to mix some clean aureolin and turquoise here. And I'll use that in a minute. Just leaving some texture behind. There we go. And again, I don't want this line to be too straight, so I'll drag some of this colour here, and maybe this way a bit, not directly under that big tree. Now I'll go a little berserk with the splatter. Lots of yellow, a little bit of the turquoise, even more yellow because I've already got this dull colour there. In fact, I'll pick up some of this cad yellow, that's a lot more opaque. That's better. That'll do. Now, I don't want all this white here, so I have to I'll pick up some of this very dull grey-green colour. Maybe some raw umber instead. Oh, we've just about lost all our Patterson's Curse. So what I might do for that is, because I've left some of these white areas, we'll just dab some blue there. That's better. I'm going to give this a light spray now because it's just drying enough that I'm losing the shine on the paper. I'll mix a dull brown with some burnt sienna, a little bit of this blue-grey colour that's already in my palette, as well as some of this dull green I've already mixed. And these, I don't know what the names of these plants are. I've seen them, most of knew them when I was a kid. A bit more blue in that mixture. There. A bit more red. Oops, too much red. These are okay because they're going to be covered by trees. This is going to have a nice big shadow over it. What I did with the splatter, you can see these vertical dark shapes. Originally I wasn't going to do that until the shadow was in, and I might still have to go back in and re-establish it later. but I just thought with the paper being just the right wetness, it was a good time to have a go at that. Anyway, what I have lost is a lot of the Paterson's Curse. I don't know whether it's that critical, quite honestly, and if I do feel like I need it later, I'll go in with the violet and just put in a few dabs, but that's all. When I look at it as it is now, most of that work I did with the sponges has just gone away. So as long as you put some of the purple colour in for the Paterson's Curse, and leave gaps in it, so you can then paint this other browny green grey colour, that's okay, right? I had a different idea as to what was going to happen with the sponge, but it didn't really work out. So this colour is basically French ultramarine, a little bit of the permanent rose, and a small amount of raw umber. And I'm just quick dry brush strokes to create that illusion of trees on top of the hill. You could even just dab them, the tip of your brush here and there. Certainly these ones that are closer, but there we go. And this comes down. And that dark is important because it helps us create this illusion of light. As we're going to have a big tree around here, and because we do have a dark shape behind it, I'm just going to just lightly dab that. So when I paint the tree over this area, I won't get the sharp edge at the bottom of the hill showing through. There. And that will do. Now we've got some shadows here. There we go. Okay. So I'm just mixing a little bit of this French ultramarine and a bit of permanent rose and just a little bit of raw umber. And I'll use that to paint my distant shadows. We might put that in now. So we've got some shadow here. There. I like the little gap there, so I don't want to lose that. And here. There we go. Then we've got a bit of a shadow over here, to the top of this hill. There. Then I'll just get my size 8 brush, make sure it's really clean. Take out about half the moisture. Then we're going to soften any edges that need softening, like that one there. That one there. here we've got a very weak shadow that runs across there. And then we might just soften this edge a little bit, not much. Great. That will do. You know, this is the colour that I used for the Paterson's Curse, but it'll also make a good shadow colour. I'm going to wet just that area there. Because what I want is to paint the shadow but have a bit of a soft edge as I come down the hill. So if I go like this, there we go. That's good enough. And then I'll get my brush and I'm just going to lift some of this edge moisture because I've got trees that I'm going to paint there very soon. But I want to keep that little highlight. So the main thing is you've got to put that line in while this top part is still quite wet, so the paint bleeds down, not up. If you wait too long, you're likely to lose all that highlight. While that's drying, I'll mix some greens. So I've got a bright green for the tree, which is just yellow, and a little bit of turquoise. But when I do the trees, I'm not going to go over them later with the shadow colour. So I'm going to paint the trees as if the shadow's already on them. So I've got these trees in the distance. So I'm going to paint them now while the shadow around them is still quite wet. So I've just mixed some of this bright green I had there, added some French ultramarine to it, and some raw umber. Later I'll probably lift a little of this dark colour and put a sunlit tree there. And then we've got these trees here, just barely touching the paper. Vary the colour a bit. They're mainly in shadow, so you don't want to make them too bright, however. Just drop in hints of trees along here. This colour is too too dull. And I'll pick up any blue-grey colour that's the right tone for these distant shadows. Too strong. There we go. Just a hint of a shadow for those. I'll mix a dull grey green and then paint this tree first. Take out some of the moisture because I don't want a lot of paint in my brush when I do this. Add more French ultramarine and raw umber. There we go. I'll add a little burnt sienna to the paint that's already in my brush and use that to paint some of the branches and trunks. There we go. And then we've got all these darker trees to either side of it. Got some lighter colours too. I might put some lighter colours in first. And the main thing is where it hits this grass, it's got to be more of a broken edge. just barely touching the paper. You could use a fan brush to create this edge as well. This is rough paper I'm using at the moment, so it's a bit easier to create this texture on rough. The trade-off with rough is it's not as easy to lift the colour off dry paper. And also the painting's just a little bit duller. And I'm just playing with the pattern here. What I don't want is a dead straight line. There we go. And that's good. You can see the light here. You know, we've got this sort of lovely light pattern. Let's paint these trees now. There's a tree in the distance that just has a bit of green on it before the shadow. We'll start with a bright green, then I'll go in with this darker green, which I've diluted a little bit because I don't want it quite as dark as this here. There we go. And I still have a shadow here. In fact, I should have put that in first. I'll come back to it. Just a little, every now and then I'll pick up some cad yellow because it's quite opaque. You can paint it over a dark colour and it will actually lighten that shape. There. Just dragging the brush over the paper. Just a hint at branches and trunks. You really can't see very much from the distance. There we go. Okay, that's fine. Just a couple of little extra bird holes there. There. And there was a nice shadow across here. I should have painted that before I painted these trees, but I'll get my shadow colour here. And I'm going to paint that down here. And get rid of some of these highlights. That shadow comes all the way across. There we go. All right, that's pretty good. I'm now just going to very lightly dry this area so I can do my main shadow. this shape has to be lighter than those trees, right? So keep that in mind. I've got this sort of grey mixture of all the colours I've used so far. I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it, just some French ultramarine. And that's probably going to be enough. And we just want a quick glaze. Just run it into those trees just a bit. Very light touch, otherwise I'll lift all the paint underneath. Try to resist the temptation to go and scrub higher up. And you can see even with all that, I've just run out. Now I need to step back and have a look at that. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm lightly spraying the foreground to keep the shadow colour wet, to keep it flowing and thus retain its translucency. Underneath this tree there's a shadow, so we'll just put that in. There's a hint of undulations on the hill. To re-establish the Patterson's curse, I'm going to mix a thick mixture of cobalt blue and a little bit of permanent rose. that's it. I'm not going to do any more on this. You'll see I haven't bothered trying to put a fence in or anything like that. This is just meant to be all hints at plants and things of that nature. This is the focal point, and I think it's worked pretty well.